Good evening, one and all. Welcome to White House Vibes. Another Sunday around the table where we're gonna look at things Jamaica. See what's happening in Jamaica, talk about, what we feel like talking about and what have you. I know enough people, enough of the listeners interested in the Holness government and what's going on. And you should. After reading Michael Abrams' article in this week newspaper published by the Gleaner, you should really think seriously, and you should think seriously because in 2016, our present prime minister made a number of promises. I'm not going to list all the promises made, but none of them was implemented. For example, term limits for the prime minister. This was something Holness was big on in his campaign to become prime minister. We also heard about job description for the politicians, the MP, and what have you. And the biggest of all, that Jamaican people can go to bed at night time and sleep comfortable, you know, not having any worry about crime and violence. You can sleep with your window open. The reality is Jamaican live in fear. Fear all over. There's a new commissioner. Everybody's up and celebrating. Said this man is and represent something new. Well, Jamaican people have a way them said, do make me see. Regardless of how I say, Them said, do make me see. I think it's too early to pass judgment on this gentleman. But you can't avoid passing judgment on Prime Minister Holness. You cannot. He made a number of promises and none of them fulfilled. And the worry right now, welcome, Brother Herb. Yes, the
Hey,
worry right,
greeting.
the worry, the
Greetings,
worry
Herb.
right, the worry right now among Jamaican is, and the question we want to explore today is, can we trust Prime Minister Holness? Can we trust him? Can we take him by his words, or should we look at his action? With me today to discuss this question and others that might arise out of the discourse. I have Brother Herb Nelson. Well, you know him. He's from the intelligence community. He's a man who always into a deep dive. So I hope Herb can share some reason why we should not trust Holness or take him by his words. Brother Patrick is a regular and he's with us. Also, Brother Lass. Gentlemen, the question before us is, and before the Jamaican people is, whether or not we can accept Holness by his word. Can we take him by his word? He made so much promises. Can we trust him? Should the Jamaican people trust Holness? If you have any question, then I'll point to Michael Abrams' argument in this week newspaper and Mark Wignall in today's newspaper are urging the GLP to come up with some solution because things not looking so well for Holness. Can we trust him? Should the Jamaican people trust Holness? Let me hear from you. Ah, Herb, you've been involved in intelligence field, and some time ago you talk about Holness having a bank account in Saint Lucia.
Yeah.
You remember that discussion?
Yes. I remember it
What more?
very well.
What's the more update now today? What is the update?
Okay. As you can see, as a result of the monies that they moved from Mexico down to St. Lucia, the Olens was able to invest it in over, I'd say, US 1 million plus investment that included three properties in Beverly Hills, and that
We have
included
proof of
the
that.
building. Huh? Yeah,
We have proof of that.
yeah, it came out. I was trying to find Zara's article where she also wrote about it. Zara Burton, and as soon as I find it, I'll pull it up. But this is something that an accountant that I know has gone over also, right? Because he had the paperwork, and when he saw it, he was saying, "Man, um, can you
Her-
imagine?"
Herb,
The,
just a minute. Can you pull back? Can you pull back from the mic? You're so close to the mic.
oh,
Go
okay,
back.
all
Yeah.
right,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Go
that.
ahead, my brother.
Can you imagine that this guy salary, which is like 9 point something million, and he's right. This is before he got the big pay raise. So it's like about 8 million to, or less than that, as a matter of fact. His salary um, could not match in any way the kind of investment he had made. Right in 2005, he was complaining that he had not been able to pay off his college loan. You recall that? He didn't have two
And
thousand
not
US dollars to pay his college.
I remember that argument. Yeah.
But here it is 3 years later. He is spending over a million US dollars. I mean, the numbers don't add up. And this is the express reason why the Integrity Commission cannot accept his filing, because he doesn't earn enough money. He didn't get enough loans to cover the outlay of cash that he put out. And so we all have to know, try to figure out, how did he come into, nobody died and left him a bunch of money. His wife didn't bring a bunch of money into the relationship. So how did he come into all of this cash? This is the trust factor that is impacting his governance, or I should say, impacting good governance. And good governance, you need what? Transparency, and you need accountability. And if you don't have that, right, then people won't trust you. I'm just looking at you know Saint Anne, Saint Catherine, Saint Elizabeth. That's where the majority of Jamaicans have a high level of trust in this prime minister. 55% St. Anne, 54% St. Mary, 53% in Portland. Even though I think in St. Mary that might have changed, because what did they do in St. Mary in the local election? They just threw out 3 out of 4 divisions that the JLP held and flip it over to the PNP, right?
what
In
are you
other
reading
parts,
from? What are,
this is some stats I pulled before we got on here. right?
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna put it in the chat. In Westmoreland, 55% of respondents distrust him. In Manchester, 53% expressed lack of trust. And I'll send you another observation by an attorney in Miami about Manchester. JLP supporters, 79% trust him, while 68% of PNP supporters express distrust. So I'm going to send this to you, and you guys can read it. You know, try and figure out what it means to you, because for this guy, I don't think it means he's going to go very far.
No.
Um, he's a prime minister, and he is the person that all Jamaica looks to take them into the future. And here it is. He's sending our men away to war. He is claiming that he has the pinnacle is going to be the next greatest thing for Jamaica. Lots of new homes being built. But all of that stuff, Michael, benefits who? It doesn't benefit the average citizen. The average citizen goes to bed, 2 million Jamaicans, and they don't have a decent meal for the day. The average citizen cannot afford homes over 20 million. They said they were going to build, 15,000 homes that cost about 10 to 13 million, so that the average citizen can get into housing. None of that stuff been done. And here's it, Juliet starts a housing scheme up in Stony Hill. What's that area in Stony
Red
Hill?
Hills.
Red
Red
Hills?
Hills.
Yeah. $23 million housing scheme. All of a sudden now the thing is worth over 800 million. Where's all this money pouring in from? How is it that they can share the secret to success with the rest of Jamaica? These are a lot of the questions, Mike, we should be asking. I put some of the stats in the private chat so you guys can take a look at it. I need to find that article that Zara Burton just completed in 18 Degrees North. And that article,
Yeah.
she outlines the salary question. How can you afford all of this stuff when your salary doesn't add up? The loans you get don't add up. And this is the problem he's having with the Integrity Commission. It does not add up. Can the average citizen, you, me, can the average citizen get away with this? They can't. The FBI would have us up on charges because would hit the suspicious activity, SAR reporting. And before you know it, they investigate. We have ill-gotten gain, and we can't prove where it comes from. It's seizure. DOJ would order a seizure, and then all our behinds
One
into
laugh.
court.
What? One laugh for them and another laugh for us. Eh?
It is.
Patrick,
It
what's
is.
your take on this?
I would
Terrible, man.
approach it.
What's
I
your
would
take
approach
on
it.
it?
I would approach a question you pose in a different way.
Go
And
ahead.
this is how I would approach it. There's an old Jamaican saying, I think you are familiar with it, that says,
Done
promise is
like
a
that.
comfort, Promise
to
is a
affluence.
comfort. Here you go. Right? We don't build our hopes on politicians' promises. That's the first thing. Secondly, right, we gotta learn from our past to move beyond it. If we don't do that, then we're doomed to keep doing the same thing over and over again. All right. You mentioned the article, and the article, of course, clearly state that, of course, this is how Holness build its popularity around promises and, trying to sweet talk him way as to what can be done. But the fact of the matter is that has never worked, and there's no way it could be expected to work, because to trust him is to say that this is my expectation of him. And how can we expect anything from promises? Our government has to lay out clear policies in terms of how they intend to accomplish whatever it is they set out to accomplish, right? Then they also have to be accountable. Holness has never been accountable, which is why there's no way you can see Herb, you can see that layout as to how him go from being broke and not being able to afford him loan repayment, right, to becoming a multi-millionaire by US dollar standards.
Yeah.
Because these are not things that are laid out plainly for you to see, right? The thing is that government enter into all kinds of deals with foreign governments. They enter into deals with the private sector and all of that. Things that are above the heads of the people. And that's, when I say above the head of the people, I mean above the head of the people in terms of the people readily knowing that. They don't tell you that. But by your own investigation, right, and your own analysis, you can make determinations. Because nobody gets something for nothing, right? Look at where the activity is, and you can determine. It's like, for example, right, we have also talked about Holness, the wife, right, and our trucking company working with the backside companies and all of that, right, benefiting in those ways. All of these are clear signs, right, of corruption, right? They're in there feathering their own nest. Also, another thing that is mighty clear to me, certainly, is that they're a copycat government. They copy all of the shenanigans where you see people like Trump do out and has been accused of. These things where you see clearly in practice in Jamaica. You listen to the Jamaican situation, you say it's the same playbook. Clearly it is. Right? So who is likely to benefit in that kind of scenario? Right? It is not ordinary people. Right? When they talk about the economy and the numbers, they don't deal with the economy and the numbers for ordinary people. They deal with the economy and numbers for big business. That's how they approach it. That's how they cover up. Right? They don't speak to bread and butter issues. Right? They don't speak to the fact that people go to their beds hungry. Right? As Radigan, clearly pointed out on his show yesterday. You can go to your bed hungry year in, year out. Right? And you see all of these economic activities going on around you and you not benefit. Right? There's no job available. There's no skill. No skill improvement. Right? No opportunities for you to open up for you get good quality jobs. Right? No good opportunity opening up. Right? For you to establish a small business and earn your bread and butter. Right? You see land being sold left, right, and center and quoted in a US dollar and all of that. When Jamaicans barely even know what a US dollar look like. Right? So how the hell can they be thinking about housing, right, through the government in those circumstances? That's not a government catering to the ordinary working people or the ordinary Jamaican, right? Who is the ones who most need help? They are the ones who most need help, right? They are the ones who cast the votes. They are the ones who you direct your promises at, right? So the whole question of trusting him is a moot point. We way past that.
I would agree. Last, I
Yeah.
I am confident that Holness is aware of the disappointment. He must when he reads the articles, the commentary and whatever, he must be aware of the disappointment and the loss in trust for him. And if he let us assume that he is aware of it. Are we looking at him using force, bullyism to stay in office? We look because people definitely the trust factor gone down for Holness. Now with the state power that he has, can we anticipate that he might try bully tactics? We might see more of that because that's the only thing they can rely on.
Bully
Eh?
tactics in terms of what you're talking about, the police and
What do you
military.
think, class?
I I I don't think that's on the card for him. Even if his
That too, but other thing.
even if his popularity is slipping, I think it's way past the era when he can use the police and the military to shore up his support or his popularity. I think it's a different time now. I don't think the appetite is there in the country to tolerate that at this time. But I looked at Holness from the angle of how he deals with public companies. We're talking about Petrojam. We're talking about Cornwall Regional. We're talking about their attitude towards the housing trust. And when you look at how Holness and the government has dealt with these institutions since they came to power, it's a total lack of transparency and a total lack of regard for what the people think of what they're doing. Like at Petrojam, we saw how they awarded contracts and how the internal finances, were being dealt with at Petrojam. And the government offered no explanation, nothing to make the people clear as to what is going wrong at Petrojam. And it had to take the court process to really give us some clarity and to hold some people accountable, right? Which Andrew Holness, when he came to power, one of the things that he promised was more transparency and more accountability in government. And a lot of people took him on his word for that. When we look at a regional hospital and see the massive overrun in cost at Cornwall Regional, and the government offered no explanation, no explanation for the contracts that they offered to people, although there were questionable contracts that were offered. And that is still an ongoing issue at Cornwall Regional, because it's Cornwall Regional cost to overall the hospital it is just increasing and increasing with no explanations to the people. At the Housing Trust, we see contracts being awarded to people with connections to the government, contracts not being fulfilled, and the government offering no explanations. At one point in time, there was a situation where they gave some company money to build some houses. It was not done. There was some kind of agreement trying to be hatched behind the scenes, and the public had no idea as to what was going on, despite the questions being asked. So the Holness government, just in their approach to governance of public institutions, has shown that we just cannot trust them.
Herb, a listeners ask the following question. What is all, with all the
Okay.
information out there, the listener Cynthia, with all the information out there, what is Holness escape routes? And by Holness, I mean people like Warmington, Moncrief, and all of those things. What is the escape route for these individuals?
There's really
Herb, the question is for you.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
You hearing me?
yes.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, there's really no escape route for these guys because there is so much lack of transparency and accountability that they have to answer to, right? When you look at all the deals that have been cut that he's involved with, when you look at the construction companies he's been involved with Garmin, his good friend of over 20 years. When you look at the finance companies that he's been involved with Garmin, his friend of over 20 years. When you look at the properties bought in Beverly Hills, when you look at the housing schemes being built, look at his house being built, everything you look at is tainted with unexplained or illicit wealth, unexplained affluence, right? No other Jamaican can do that. And all of the promises within 100 days, he's going to make sure you can't, stay in office if you're corrupt. Where did that change? Where's the recall election that you're supposed to be able to do? Right? The only time he went ahead with Jamaica being a republic idea is when he saw how popular it's made the Barbadian prime minister. And he knew Prince not Harry, but William was coming down. And so he's an opportunist. He jumps on certain things to make himself look bigger than he really is. Right? And his downfall could very well be what we've been pushing for, what we've been talking to the US government about, the Magnitsky Act, the Global Magnitsky Act, and some other acts that they're going to fall into. that has to do with bribery on the US side as well as on the Jamaica side. It's not a one-way street anymore. The law passed back in December ensures that anybody who does bribery, that they will get nailed to the wall, whether you're American or whether you're Jamaican or any other nationality for that matter, right? But when you look at his wealth and the fact that he's failed to deliver on all the homes promised, all the things that he said he would do for people to make people's life easier. Let's just look at the impact. What did the US government complain about in the travel advisory? It wasn't crime, because crime had been addressed back in like March of 2022, right? And they had a level 3 warning out back then about crime in Jamaica. What they were complaining about was healthcare, telling Americans if you go to Jamaica and you get sick or you get in an accident, you're liable to die, which is the truth. We've had people in car accidents, not necessarily all Americans, but from different countries and from Jamaica itself, who died because they don't have ventilators to keep them breathing, to help them breathe, right? When you see Cornwall Regional Hospital costs escalate from 2.5 billion up to over 21.5 billion, you have to wonder what's going on. How is it possible those costs can escalate 3 or 4 times and get up so high? When you look at the hospital and people sleeping in hallways and people in Savannah Lamar Hospital that tell us they have to sleep on truck tires with a plyboard on top of the tires. Just listen to the stories and ask yourself, where in the hell are these tourists gonna sleep if they get sick? And it becomes a scary prospect. Not even just the tourists, but returning residents have to think about that. Us, the diaspora, as visitors, we have to think about that, right? So you look at the demise of the healthcare and the fact that all of these programs that they spend money on. Market Me spent money on a program to help Jamaicans control their weight and get fit. And nobody in the diaspora heard about the program. And nobody in Jamaica remembers the program. But yet still, one lady that is a
What program
person,
is that?
it's a Market Me campaign program. I don't know if you remember the Market Me. You remember that lady that he got in trouble with because he was performing a certain act on her, and it was on
You
video.
remind me?
He was performing a sex act on this woman,
No.
and
Who was performing?
the
Who was performing that?
minister of health. The minister of health was. And this was the same
Okay.
lady he had given an $85 million contract to, or somewhere in that region.
That was a contract?
Yes. Right? So I guess he was
Yeah.
collecting on the returns.
You have evidence of this?
But Mike, it's out there in the
Was that
public
published?
domain. It was they published the video.
I only mind if you could find that and bring that. Okay.
Well, we're
So you're
working on.
saying
Yeah.
Okay.
But
But the
here's
level of
here's
corruption. Yeah. Go ahead, Patrick.
here's the thing though. When you really stop to really think about this whole thing, right? One of the things that Holness has managed to do pretty well is I was chasing all kinds of stories and distractions, right? While he continues shenanigans, because that's really how corruption works. They create all of these distractions, right? And then people get confused by the amount of things that are going on. It's like, for example, you mentioned the healthcare system, right, and Jamaica, and the travel warnings for people traveling to Jamaica and all of that. One of the big thing about that, which people don't mention, is that there's a big business venture coming out of that too, because people traveling to Jamaica, right, take out these big travel insurance, right? These travel insurance which ensure that if they get into some medical problem down there, they can airlift them out of Jamaica real fast, right? Back to hospital in Miami and that kind of stuff, right? So the approach that is taken to these things is one of protecting oneself and finding your own way out, right? But not really getting to the whole problem of what's brought about by the inefficiency of the government, right? And the fact that nothing seems to be moving in the right direction. We don't get into the whole nitty-gritty of how much the economy has not grown since 2016, right? And the fact that these things are really the real telltale, right, for the ordinary working people. We don't get into the whole analysis of what's going on at the NHT, right? Because this is taxes being collected, right? Where does it go? What is it used for? Right? We know what it was supposed to be like from back in the day when the NHT was formed, right? But how has that changed? Right? These are the things we need to pull the lid off them now and really reveal exactly what's going on in the government on a day-to-day basis, right? In terms of unaccountability. The unaccountability with education, the unaccountability with backside earnings, the unaccountability with all of the various sectors, right? The downturn of production, all of these things. These are the things we really need to get into, because these are the real telltale as to why it is that things don't happen. Because we know the only way things happen is by production to step up. That's the only way things really happen, right? Production has to step up, right? The economy has to expand and grow.
One listener. Well, how that is going to happen? How is that going to happen when you're working class? I'm saying the question that the economy is not growing. We need to talk about that and what have you. Okay, I agree with that. But my question: how can the economy grow when the people live in fear? How can they go? Nobody not going to want to come out at night time, go do late night shift. One time ago in the 70s, Spanish Town Road used to run probably 3 shifts a night, 3 shifts to the day. You understand me? You could have earned that money, but you know I have no economy going when people are living in fear. Not
but
just
it's
living in fear, but also I'm reading here a question, a remark from one of the listeners. yeah, and what she said here is that I didn't know this, but what she said here is that the prime minister has 19 ministry under his portfolio at Jamaica House.
19
That's
agencies.
what she's saying.
All the agencies that make money.
19 agents
Yeah.
under
All the
his
agencies
portfolio.
that
No,
make money,
that's
Michael.
supposed to raise question.
It's
And I
very
also hear
questionable.
that it also what she's saying here is that a lot of these guys who are involved in are ex police and army men. You understand me? So what the hell is happening? One gentleman, one individual has 19 agency under, the centralization have reason to be fearful
A
and
good
worried.
example, a good example, Michael, is NEPA. Anything having to do with the environment, anything having to do with beach control, big subject in Jamaica. Because Jamaica has almost 500 miles of beaches, and there's only access to about 2.5 miles of it. So just think about that for a second. Let that soak in, and the listeners think about that. Everybody that comes there,
So
that buys property, that develops property, they shut down the beach access, and the government allows them to do that. They don't do it in in the Bahamas. They don't do it in Barbados, but they're doing it in Jamaica. They tried it in Grenada. The Grenadians almost had an uprising. And even St. Lucia recently there was big
why
protests,
Jamaica?
and Jamaica is doing it to the people.
Well, the question is not why Jamaica. The question is why not Jamaica? Because it's happening.
Yep. Why not Jamaica? Jamaicans are too docile. Jamaicans don't come out and protest in big numbers. When Andre organized the protests because of the
I wouldn't say
230%,
that. Because nine, 19, I wouldn't say that.
you're breaking up, Michael. You're breaking.
1930s shows that Jamaican will rise up.
Where are we now?
Show us that
1930s, you said?
Where are we now?
the condition. Yeah, show us that Jamaicans will rise up. I just think that the conditions, the contradictions are not at that point now where there's no alternative. The country and people are doing that. Each month the American government allow X amount to come to leave the country and sort of let out the hair out of the bag. To less it's going to come. I really think it's going to come once we can identify or there's a leader, a popular leader who can galvanize the different forces, both PMP and GLP and independent. It will happen. But this corruption thing and this fear, this move towards centralization of services is something that should worry every Jamaican. Don't you think?
But this is where you and I have strong disagreement again, Mikey. Because I've said
Okay,
this
well,
before. It's like every time you mention the word leader associated with government, it makes me cringe. Politicians are not leaders. They cannot be leaders. Right? They cannot be leaders. We employ politicians. That's a piece we don't seem to get. Right? It's like employing someone to run your company. You don't have a clue how the company run, and you don't seek for better yourself, better your understanding, and knowing how the company run. right? Rather than doing that, you remain at the mercy of the person who you employ. That can't be a successful company. It cannot be. Right? The fact of the matter is that when it comes to the government performance and the economics and all of these things which we just mentioned, right? It must raise questions. And when it raises questions, right, we must seek to get answers. We must seek to get answers. We must seek, because that's where the clarity comes, right? That's where the understanding comes from, right? The answers we get through the analysis, right, and the information we get. Right? The information we get and the analysis of it. Because, yeah.
What I'm saying, you know, I'm in agreement with you, you know, brother. I'm in agreement with you. But I'm saying the conditions are not there yet. Because look, everybody is talk about the corruption. But what are they doing about it?
But why you think they talk about the corruption? Like you said, that is part of the fear. That is part of the fear.
And just make part.
But that is part of the fear. Part of the fear is in not understanding what's going on and seeing things happening which really isn't taking us in a direction that makes us comfortable, right? Or seem to be taking us towards that direction.
Okay.
Right? So in other words, the more, every day you wake up, things seem to get worse.
Yeah.
Las, what's your take, bro?
Yeah. My thing again, you know, is that one of the things I also look at, you know, in saying that this Holness and the GLP government cannot be trusted is that one of the promises that was made by Holness when he came to power is that he's going to clean up government. He's going to make ministers and members of parliament more accountable, right? And one of the things that we saw or have been seeing in his administration since he took power is how so many of his ministers have been involved in corruption and shady activity. And it's almost as if he's wearing blinkers, like he's turning his head the other way. We had people like Daryl Vaz, who was implicated in the what was that rooms on the beach? What was that scandal again?
Well, it was the sale of this hotel.
Yeah, rooms on the beach or something that was the name. Right?
And it was assessed value was 12 million.
Yeah.
Right? And it sold for 7 million.
Exactly.
And then there was money that was picked up in a foreign country, brought back to Jamaica and used in elections.
And things like these, the Prime Minister who promised us that he would clean up and make these people more accountable, he turned his head the other way. It was only under public pressure and pressure from the opposition that any kind of action was like a slap on the wrist. I think Vaz was put in charge of some other portfolio, just a slight change. Still,
so he was rewarded then. He was rewarded. If him
Yeah,
get put
yeah,
in charge of something else.
yeah.
Let,
So,
let
so
me help, let me help you out,
yeah,
Lance. Vaz was lost his visa. Both he and his wife lost their U.S. visas, right? And the ambassador, U.S. ambassador under Trump, came back after Trump left office, and he brought with him this other guy from the Bush administration. They were running a 5G telecommunication operation. And of course, the US wanted to replace Huawei, the Chinese company down in Ochi, where the 5G cables, undersea cables, come ashore, right? All of a sudden, Vaz gets his visa back. And you know what was annotated on his visa? The annotation was, and this is coming from the State Department, and we have talked about it numerous times, well, he was a drug dealer, right? In effect, that's the code that was on his visa. Now, you would think that with everybody who had that annotation, which may include, I say may include, Chang, from the time in 1980 that Chang appeared in WikiLeaks cables from the embassy in Jamaica, that he was in bed with Shane Robinson and the MP from St. Thomas. What's that MP again? Your um, I can't remember his name.
Robertson.
Roberts. Roberts. Yes. Yes. So you have a lot of implication of wrongdoing in the party. There are 8 ministers who have been investigated, and some of them had to be moved, and some of them were brought back right away because that 9-day wonder period in Jamaica,
blown away.
that's it. It's moving. But you have to look at the leadership of the country. Prime Minister Holness, you started with Michael, and Prime Minister Holness has got to be a strong leader, got to put his foot down. He should have fired people and should have had the DPP to prosecute these people. Instead, you see them trying to run the clock out and Royal Read, in other words, run it down till statute of limitations expire. Same thing they did with the Dr. Grace McLean at the Ministry of Education, where 124 million was missing. They run the clock out. So now they can't prosecute her no more over that money. And this prime minister keep doing these things. He never investigated or asked for an investigation from the local CTOC or the other one, MOCA, for all those people who lost their visas that the US accused of corruption. No investigations on them. So you have to wonder what in the hell is going on with the integrity of our government. You know? And I have Michael, if you want me to introduce him, my accountant that did a review
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead,
of
Earl.
the prime minister's figures, right? So we want our audience to know what the review was about
Yeah, go ahead.
and what led to Zara writing her article. Mike.
Hello, gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you for the audience. I appreciate your very powerful company and articulation of the different issues. And I know your plate is full, so I won't dilly-dally at all. I get to the facts. I guess what troubles me the most is simply this. How do you acquire properties This was the primary issue I noticed. How do you acquire properties that are 10 times your earnings? Probably closer to 12 times your earnings. The banks don't have any coverage here because should something go wrong, you have no equity because all the properties way exceed your capabilities to pay. Notwithstanding, some of the properties were alleged to have loans that are non-existent. And I say non-existent because even if there are loans involved and there's no registration of a lien to protect the interests of the lender, why would a lender do that? It comes back to the same problem that we're having here in this country with 45, in that the people who lend him money have undue influence over his decision making. And therefore, the prime minister is not exempt from that criticism. If you have that many private loans that you have accepted to acquire these properties, what are you doing in return for them? Not only that, some of the loans appear to be liquidated in a manner inconsistent with the same earnings. In other words, when you get a loan, an amortization schedule is set up. So each month when you make the payment, some goes to the interest, some goes to the principal, and the loan balance keeps going down. However, when you look at that stuff, it makes you wonder who has that kind of influence over the prime minister, or to whom does he cater? And these are serious questions because they affect the objectivity of what he does. And he can say he has loans and he's paying the loans back, but with all due respect to the prime minister, and he's entitled to the benefit of innocence until proven guilty, the numbers don't add up. Now, I've often said that his wife, being an accountant, probably has a detailed knowledge of the situation we don't have because she's married to the man. However, from an objective standpoint, there is no explanation she can provide that explains how the prime minister services debt. Okay? And that is an issue that if you have an integrity commission and they're looking into this stuff, I tip my hat to those gentlemen. I'm assuming they have the right counsel, the right accountants, the right financial advisors that can walk them through the process. But I will be shocked if they have not asked a question and I haven't gotten any answers, because it is my understanding that they have not yet signed off on his financial declarations that he has made. But them remaining quiet without the public having the benefit of transparency and integrity only helps the prime minister. It doesn't help the integrity commission to maintain their own integrity. So there has to be some kind of a breakthrough here where there's disclosure as to what they're holding him accountable for and why they have not yet approved his financial declarations. And that's just based on the facts out there, nothing more. And I think it's important for those in the know and in the proper authorities to press the prime minister to get some answers. But as Herb said a few minutes ago, there is a pattern here. The pattern is running out the clock and not addressing probably issues of fraud and malfeasance. And if they're allowed to do that, then it's all you have to do is look at the overturning of the conviction of that artist by the Privy Council.
It's gotta.
That kind of stuff, there's an underlying issue here, gentlemen, of transparency and integrity, regardless of who's in charge. You cannot have the highest levels of your justice system justice system perverted. Because all it means that the poor man who gets in trouble, who may be innocent, cannot even defend himself or herself because they don't have the money. So the people who get off invariably have access to large amounts of cash. They're somewhat wealthy and they can, avoid the system of justice or fight all the way to the Privy Council and get it overturned. So the Prime Minister and his party have to address the issue of corruption. And as long as they're not doing that, we are where we are. But it's appalling, really appalling, because 12 times your salary in acquiring real estate.
And his salary is $62,000 back then. That's what he was getting.
And the real estate acquired was $680,000.
Yeah.
That's
$780,000. That's the explanation he has to come up with as to how he acquired what he acquired. And there's no track and tracing of viable documents to show he got the loans or who gave him the money.
So I just want to ask Mike a question. Mike, your explanation, it would suggest that kind of, if the Prime Minister is in those kind of transactions where these loans are not accounted for, it also raises the possibility of money being laundered through these kinds of transactions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the deal. Keep in mind, the properties were originally registered on the ADMAT in St. Lucia. St. Lucia wanted to clean up its act and be a real player, said, no more. You can't be registered here unless there's economic benefit to the country of St. Lucia. So that immediately forced his hand. Part of the problem is that he also executed a transaction while ADMAT was suspended by St. Lucia. He bought the Beverly Hills property. I think that's the property he bought while they were suspended. Then when they applied for retroactive reinstatement and paid the $5,500 or thereabout fee for reinstatement, then it just conveniently made the transaction that was executed while they were out of favor look like it was an appropriate transaction. Now, St. Lucia doing that also forced him to re-register those entities in Jamaica and transfer ownership. And at all times, he was a sole director. His sons were shareholders, but he was a sole director. I doubt if the sons would challenge his decisions since they stand to benefit from it in terms of it passing on to them when he goes. So they're not going to challenge him. So there's no objective in that. So he's the sole director who makes those decisions. Now, you transfer to Jamaica, you pay the transfer tax or whatever. The question then begs how could this go on the way it went on? It turns out that one of the gentlemen involved is also a part of, I think it's JLA is the name of the institution, right? He worked with the Prime Minister to change the laws. And the Prime Minister's public statement was that we want to make it easy for people to transact business. Well, the Prime Minister could have said, I want to make it easy for me to move my properties back to Jamaica and pay the least amount of taxes. That would have been a more forthright statement. Because the truth is, when you keep the properties in St. Lucia, right, what do you have? They're disguised. People don't know who owns them, just see activity on the properties, but they're disguised. So concealment is there. Unless, to address the question you raised, these properties he acquired, there are no loans on record other than for his first house that he bought, the value of which never went up that much to afford him equity to buy these other properties. So again, you have these acquisitions that don't show any obligations, any liens against them, as if they're cleanly held. So they're cleanly held and they're transferred over. From whom were they transferred? And why were they transferred without any kind of debt being shown? Is there an unreported relationship that he benefits from? Could be money laundering. And that if his money laundering could extend to other nefarious activities like drug dealing and the like, you never know. I'm not going to say he's guilty of that. I have no evidence of that. But it certainly opens the door to that kind of conjecture. And that's why, in serving the best interests of the people, it's necessary to be forthcoming and transparent. That way, a reasonable person can see, oh, these are properly acquired. Right now, there's no such indication. And that's why it's troubling. But the average Joe doesn't really understand the flow of these transactions. So someone has...
But that may drop off.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, that's a lot to swallow.
Mike made
it looked like he
very
dropped off,
interesting point. Right?
He's back. Yeah, he raised some good.
See, I'm putting the story out to the audience because it's actually out there in print now. And here he is.
Right. So what I'm saying is these transactions deserve a bright light scrutiny because, to stretch a point further, I'll make this point. As a Jamaican, I've read in many places where our people don't have access to the beaches that are held by these different entities. And part of the problem you have here is how compromised is the prime minister and members of his party. And that's a real question to be answered because the Jamaican people need to know that the ground they stand on hasn't been sold from under them. In the proverbial, pretty literal sense for that. And we can't even assert that with any kind of conviction. I think it's important then that this issue be placed under a bright light. I think the Integrity Commission, if it values its integrity, should be making a statement to the public as to where they stand. Now, I know the Prime Minister's benefit is entitled to the benefit of being innocent until proven guilty. But this issue has been sat on by the Integrity Commission for an unreasonable period of time. And that being said, when do you speak up and demonstrate that you're really an Integrity Commission? And not a bunch of guys in retirement who've been bought and paid for and who can enjoy a luxurious retirement. It's a fair question. It's a fair question. So you gentlemen are giving it the right scrutiny, and hopefully someone out there can give an answer.
One of the things as you speak, Mike, that concerns me and comes more to the fore with the Integrity Commission and these bodies, these advocacy organizations in Jamaica, is that we hear them talk at times about these issues, but I don't think the seriousness and the kind of advocacy that these things demand is being pushed as aggressively as it should. Because, as you rightly point out, we have to question who is the Prime Minister, and not just the Prime Minister, but these public officials who breach these kind of rules. Who are they accountable to? because the more there's lack of transparency in these kind of dealings, the less we know of who is behind these guys and why they bring certain policies and decisions to government, right? Sometimes we might think it is in, they're bringing these things in the public's interest, when if we knew all the truth, we would see that some of these things they're bringing forward are in their own personal interests, like the whole idea of making business easier to transact without the red tape and all of these things. Sometimes these guys might be bringing these things just to justify their own illegal transactions, you know. So I believe
That is true.
these public advocacy groups and Jamaicans as a whole definitely needs to be more aggressive in dealing with these issues. I mean, we have been dealing with the Integrity Commission reports, a lot of them, for quite a while, and it's as if it's standing still in space. You know, that's not good enough.
Let me add a little color to that for you, Les. Ever since independence to now, Jamaica and Barbados have been thought of as a dichotomy. One be more successful for different reasons. Literacy rate, whatever. One of the things Jamaica has craved for a while now is to become the financial epicenter of the Caribbean. Despite her size and limited successes in different things, Jamaica has not enjoyed that blessing of being the financial center of the Caribbean as compared to the Cayman Islands and other places, other smaller islands within the Caribbean archipelago. And they've tried in many ways through many administrations to improve that attractiveness. And there are other things that we in Jamaica have achieved that are noteworthy. But being the financial epicenter of the Caribbean is a nugget that they seek. But in seeking it, they shot themselves in the foot, so to speak, with scandals like SSL and the like. Why? Because what you're telling people is that your compliance part of your government, the Auditor General, and other rules that govern that process are so weak, investors should fear investing in Jamaica. And I think the Honorable Finance Minister needs to address that issue. They can get up and make statements that say, oh, people think and people want to come to Jamaica. The truth is, everybody knows that if you have a low bar of compliance, you'll attract all kinds of people. And quite often it's dirty money. The history has shown in the last 5 years, since Trump left office, the number of people associated with that lineage, how many of them are caught with dirty money in different parts of the Caribbean. So, but Jamaica can be an epicenter because Jamaica has so many other things that draw people in. But to be that epicenter, you must have some strong regulatory rules that make investors comfortable that they're not going to be subject to a scam. And yet we have gained more notoriety for the number of scams that we run out of Jamaica than anything else. And we need to change that. We need to change that. And the people who have to change that, I was having a conversation not that long ago, and I said, the Jamaican middle class are the ones paying taxes. Okay? And Jamaican middle class has to have a vested interest in what the government does, because if they don't, the government will devalue what they own in the middle class. And what they own amount to nothing. Only 2 days ago, I read an article in The Guardian, a UK newspaper, that talks about the British enticing Jamaican teachers to England in droves and Jamaican classrooms being emptier. From a historical perspective, one of the things that hurt Jamaica in the past was the fact that we did not invest enough in classrooms and in education. And we're from full circle in 2023, 24, we're having the same problem. Why? This kind of derelict thinking doesn't make any sense. And we can talk about technology and developments and building condos and 28-story buildings. That's like fantasy land. The people, you have these graduates coming out of different schools who have to leave. About a year or two ago, the finance minister, whom I respect because of his accomplishments, talked about the brain drain and having to retain these people. If you want to retain these people, you have to make the landscape attractive and insist that those who want to do business in Jamaica must employ qualified Jamaicans. That's not hard to do because we are a very attractive place to invest. But what we have is the opposite. And you have dirty money and the prime minister in the same sentence. And you talk about these ministers who are subject to probable criminal probes that they won't disclose the names. Herb said earlier 8. Publicly, they've talked about 6. The remaining 2 don't make a difference if you're not going to address everybody collectively. And the prime minister, he loves to say, I don't envy a man who get in big house. Well, he got his big house, and there are more questions about his big house than necessary. Because there's no transparency or integrity in what he has done. Now, we can have these programs all we want. The big question then is, to whom should we be looking for some constructive response and more transparency, bright light on these issues? The Prime Minister enjoys the protection of the government.
That's be the question. That has always been the question.
I think you're so on point, Mike. You really raise quite a bit. I mean, it's like the more I wanna speak to something you raise and question, then you bring out some more. But something that comes to mind as you mentioned the whole thing of Barbados and Jamaica. And this is a little known history fact, right? That kind of rivalry, if we want to call it that, with Jamaica and Barbados, right, as a historical root to it. Barbados was the first British colony, right? And that's where the British established their first experiment with sugar production.
That's true.
And in the first year of sugar production, right, the sugar production of Barbados, little Barbados, right, grew the British economy by 50%.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The first year. And who took over that is after the capturing of Jamaica and the sugar production starting in Jamaica. Right? Then Jamaica became the dominant economic force in the Caribbean, had the strongest currency, everything. And even in our time, we can remember at the time when in 1969, before the currency change in Jamaica, the US dollar, well, right after the currency change, right, the US dollar was valued at 70 cents to one Jamaican dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Jamaica had one of the strongest economy, and it's one of the reasons why it is
Patrick,
always looked toward. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why it is always seen as, you know,
Patrick, I appreciate.
Breaking up, Mike here.
Patrick, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. I understand the direction you're going, but I want us to stay on topic because Mike raised some interesting question. Very interesting question in terms of who do we look to? The questions he asked, especially around,
That's precisely what I'm coming to.
what's happening with
That's
that.
precisely what I'm coming to.
I saw something. Okay, go ahead. The land transfer and now the property is moved from St. Lucia and now registered in Jamaica. That's what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Patrick?
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Mikey, one of the things I
Mike,
want you all to realize in a
You're breaking up, Mikey.
I'm not hearing you,
Mikey, you may have to go. You may have to go out and come back in because it's bad.
I think it's bad all around, so that probably won't even help.
Just with Mike, man. Just with Mikey.
Oh.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
One of the things I want to also point to is this.
Can you
One
hear
of
me
the
now?
sales
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Mm-hmm. Continue, Mike.
One of the transactions the Prime Minister executed was where he sold a property that he had for many years for the same price. And he sold it to, I think it was a doctor and his wife or something like that. But it's a curious transaction simply because in real estate, you sell and you resell a property after holding it for an extended period of time for the same price you paid for it. And in a market that is growing.
Last Mike.
Yeah.
Whoa.
He'll come back. But folks, that's why it's necessary. Okay, there you go.
Okay, Mike's back.
Yeah, so I think he sold for 60 million Jamaican and he bought it for 60 million Jamaican. And it's a curious transaction because the buyers declare that they have no previous knowledge of anything and they're not associates or friends of the Prime Minister and the like. And the transaction begs in many ways. But it's not just by itself. In the context of all the other transactions, it makes you wonder. And Mikey, back to the question. Who addresses these issues? Who can the public then rely on to rise above the noise and say, here's where we go with this? The Parliament has failed to exercise its discretionary powers to hold the Prime Minister accountable. And I've not read the Jamaican Constitution cover to cover.
Gentlemen.
But I'm sure the Jamaican Constitution allowed it to supersede the Parliament.
Mike, can you hear me, gentlemen?
I can hear you.
Hear you now.
Yeah, it is obvious that we're having technical problems. So what I want to do, Mike, can you come back next Sunday, join us next Sunday, and have a full discussion? Because I think what you're raising, we need to make sure that the listeners are hearing what you're saying. You're raising some very important points. So, can you come back? Can we
Not a
agree to
problem.
next Sunday?
Yes. I'll talk to
Not a
Herb and
problem.
figure out time, and
Gentlemen,
I'll make myself available.
okay. Gentlemen, we're having some problem, and I think it's only reasonable that we don't put the listeners through it with a problem anymore. So, can and I want to thank you all for the time, despite the difficulties, and we're gonna do this thing all over next Sunday with Mike, and we'll look at it. Can we agree on that, everyone? Next Sunday,
Oh yeah,
same
absolutely,
Yeah, we
time,
could.
same
absolutely. This
place.
is definitely to be continued.
Yeah. Well, let's
All right.
wrap up.
So until next Sunday, gentlemen, we'll talk. All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
what good.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. So next Sunday we're gonna. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, Mikey.